Hello everyone, and welcome back to, finally, another video. I'm sorry I've been gone a while, but Superman kind of broke me more than I had anticipated, and kind of more importantly than that, I kind of got to a point where if any of you guys have watched my previous videos, most of them have been very negative. Now, granted, if Hollywood would, Hollywood, well, not just Hollywood, but, DC, Marvel, all these people, entertainment industries, comics, videos, movies, whatever, would be putting out good content, would have to be some negative on it. Granted, that's all opinionated, but it is what it is. So I kind of wanted to take a break until I found something that I genuinely liked, that I genuinely enjoyed. And as you can see by the title and the thumbnail of the video, I did. And coincidentally, this is also going to be my first kind of sort of video game review. I'm going to talk about it, but I don't really want to go heavy into spoilers because if you're someone like me who loves superhero content of any form, whether it's in games, movies, whatever, I really kind of want you guys to go play this for yourself. Because, spoiler alert, I really enjoyed Dispatch. Honestly, I loved it. I really, really had a great time playing it. I've played it a couple times. I know it's kind of like it's kind of all over the internet. If you're into that kind of thing at all, I'm sure you've probably seen something about it. But yeah, it's been really, really just genuinely nice to get something. And I know because I'm so starved for some kind of superhero content, whatever it is, story-wise, characters, games, movies, whatever, it's kind of like the idea of being someone who's been out in the desert wandering for a long period of time, and a pool of tepid water comes up to you, and you tasting it, it's like the greatest thing ever because you haven't had water in God knows how long. In normal circumstances, I would probably say the game's about, I don't know, maybe average, slightly above average, but considering how terrible things have really been recently, and by recently I mean the last 10 years, I feel like myself and a lot of other people, because this game is getting a lot of hype, a lot of attention, a lot of positive feedback, a lot of us are kind of probably hyping it up more than it kind of deserves, maybe in some aspects. It's not a perfect game, not a perfect anything by any stretch of the imagination, but I did genuinely enjoy it. So I wanted to talk about it. I wanted to finally make another video because it's been so long, because I miss doing this. And yeah, so that's basically it. I've got my handy little notes on my tablet here, so I don't forget anything, because I've been doing it the last couple times and it worked pretty well. So basically just going to jump into it. I'm going to start off talking about the things that I did like, and even in some cases I really loved. And then I am also going to talk about the things that I didn't like, because again, it was not perfect, and I'm not going to come on here and lie to you guys and be like, oh, it was this perfect, great thing, there's nothing wrong with it. No, there are some issues with it. And I'm going to try not to be too overly critical, because a little bit of background on this game is developed by a company called Ad Hoc Studios. They're a very indie company. This is the very first thing they've ever put out. They are basically a group of writers who would do the old Telltale Games. They got together after that company went out and started to do their own thing. And the first thing they released was Dispatch, which is basically, it initially started off as being kind of like a superhero workplace sitcom, kind of like The Office, but with superheroes. And I believe this has been going on, this was in the works since like about 2018-ish. So there's been a lot of changes, a lot of development, and they turned it into a video game. And it's very much a Telltale style video game. You have choices and prompts and things, and your choices kind of affect the game. That's one of the things I'll talk about later. I wish they had a little more impact on certain things, on the actual overall story, but for the most part, I did enjoy it. Now, to start off, the biggest thing I have with the game, the thing I love the most, which I think is probably the biggest thing this game has going for it, are the characters. The characters were really fun. It's basically about this former superhero who loses the ability to be a superhero. He has this big mech suit. He's not any kind of like rich like Iron Man guy where he's depleted all of his resources, and he basically, when we meet him at the game, he's kind of at the end of his rope. His suit's been damaged beyond repair, and he basically doesn't really have anything really left to lose or anything to really fight for. And this character, his name's Robert Robinson III. He's been like a generational superhero named Mecha Man. That's the name of the mech suit in the superhero kind of thing. It's very Iron Man inspired. Which you can tell a lot of the stuff in the game, there's all kinds of nods to other like superheroes and even other, pop culture things, which is really fun. This character named Blonde Blazer shows up, who basically works at SDN, which stands for Superhero Dispatch Network. It's basically kind of like if S.H.I.E.L.D. from Marvel is kind of like a private security team. That's the best way I could describe it. And Blonde Blazer's kind of somewhat like a Captain Marvel, the way she's supposed to be, not the way she's been for the last 10 years, kind of Wonder Woman hybrid. She's a really cool character. I liked her a lot. And she shows up and gives Robert the chance to join SDN, mentoring their rookie group of heroes who are actually villains that they're trying to rehabilitate. And the game, the main story of the game is basically about, Robert working with them and learning how to, handle them and teach them and, shape them into something, because they're very much a motley crew of individuals, very, Suicide Squad, Guardians of the Galaxy kind of thing, where they should not be together. They're a bunch of villains, button heads all the time. And Robert basically tries to, corral them, teach them what being a hero means, and make something out of it. So that's basically the premise of the game. Now, one of the controversial to some, I thought it was really fun, kind of funny at some points. There is an opportunity where you can have a choice on what character you want to explore a relationship with, be it Blonde Blazer or another character in Visigal. And some people have said, and I cannot agree with this more, if you were around in the Twilight era, like 2008, 2009, there was this big whole, Team Jacob versus Team Edward. The whole, Team Blonde Blazer, Team Invisigal feels like that, but for nerds. It's really funny, and there's been a lot of... It started off very fun, but some people take it too far, but it was pretty cool. I like that they had that little thing there where you kind of choose who you want to romance. I am a Blonde Blazer glazer myself. I do not care. She is my baby girl. Anyway, so you basically, you learn with them. They come, they learn how to be a team. You get to, explore SDN and all the different characters. And there's a big bad named Shroud who Robert actually has connections with, to his past, actually his family. And he's a very cool character. He aesthetically kind of looks like Red Hood from Batman, but he's very much kind of like this. He has the ability through some of his tech and whatnot. He knows about probability, and he can read people and things and stuff. And it's very kind of an interesting concept. I'm sure it's been done plenty of times before, but I like this kind of play on it. So that's the kind of basis of the story, which is also kind of one of the issues I do have with it. But we'll talk to that more in the actual issues that I have with it. But the characters, for the most part, were really fun. I love Robert. Robert feels very relatable in that he's very much a snarky, sarcastic guy. He won't take it from anybody. He can dish it as well as he can take it, which is really cool. I love Blonde Blazer. She felt like that kind of, she almost kind of Captain America-y in a way. That she's very good, positive. She's the stereotypical hero kind of archetype. And Visigal was very much a character who I was not a fan of at first. She felt like, just by her design, you kind of thought, oh god, she's going to be one of those characters. But she wasn't, she had, it's actually kind of complex in a lot of ways. Royd was another one of my favorites. He's like this big buff. He looks like, kind of puts me about Maui from Moana. He was a lot of fun. Chase, who has been described as Black Einstein. He is a character that Rob knows from his past that comes back into the fold because he works at SDN. He's hilarious. Jeffrey Wright, who's the voice of Chase, absolutely hysterical. He's probably my favorite character. If it's not Robert, it's one of those two. They go back and forth because Chase is hysterically funny. He's like this crotchety old man, but he's not really an old man. If you actually play through the game, the story, you'll understand what I mean by that. But I like the characters. I like them a lot. I can't really say there's any character, maybe at the start of the game, that I was kind of like, ugh. But by the end of the game, I was like, you know what? pretty much across the board, I liked all the characters, which is rare. And they felt like actual characters. You know, one of the most annoying things about a lot of superhero media, and I blame things like Injustice, The Boys, Invincible, and there's a myriad of other things for this whole, we have to deconstruct the superhero all the time. You know, if ever there's, and even in this game, there is a Superman stand-in. His name's Phenomenon. You can tell by the look of his costume, by his reputation, his kind of powers, the fact that he's an alien. He's very much meant to be this world, universe, story game, whatever you want to call it, Superman stand-in. And he's just a good guy. Now, they kind of play him like, since he's an alien, I kind of see some similarities to Thor, where he's very much a fish out of water. He doesn't understand, humans and all their, subtleties and things. But he's not, it's, you see him and you go, oh God, are they gonna, deconstruct him and he's gonna be actually evil? But no, he's good. And the same way with Blonde Blazer, you see her and you think, and a lot of people thought, and I kind of understand it, a lot of people for a long stretch of time thought that Blonde Blazer was going to be a villain because she just seemed too good to be true. And we're so conditioned by current superhero media and just media in general that if this person's really, really good, they have to be evil. They have to be hiding something. And that thankfully was not the case, because that would have been very frustrating, because I actually liked the character a lot, and I am so genuinely tired of, we got to deconstruct everything. From Watchmen, like I said, mentioned The Boys, Injustice, all that. Just give me heroes being heroes. And we got a lot of that through Robert and Blazer and Phenomenon. Even though the Z team, which is the what the team of characters of these villains that Robert's mentoring is called, even though they're originally villains, they're not like, they feel like there's no I don't know how to describe it. They don't come off as, again, more deconstruction. They learn, they grow, they develop as characters. We're not deconstructing, we're constructing. We're building these characters up, which it feels sad to say is refreshing. We shouldn't have to say, it's refreshing to have, just proper, positive, heroic characters. But here we are. Another thing I really enjoyed about this game is, for it being, this company's first, initial product of anything, the animation was very good. It was very fluid. It was very, it worked when it was solid, and it worked in motion. I'm a big animation guy. I, at one point in my life, wanted to become an animator or comic book artist, so I'm very, drawn to that kind of thing. I love traditional, classic 2D Disney animation, and I can enjoy some good 3D animation, but I'm always going to prefer 2D animation, but I liked this because it wasn't like your standard 3D modeled, like CGI. This was more like the 2D style of CGI, where it's still, here. Actually, I can show you guys, because I am such a fan of this. I found a calendar on TikTok Shop to buy, and you can kind of tell, whereas obviously you can see there's shadows and shading and things. It's not, the typical kind of 3D animation for a video game, which is nice. I think that aesthetic really works. So I did like that. I like the character designs. The heroes felt very different from one another. They weren't, copy paste. Again, you can see here you got there's Blonde Blazer, and you got Flambe, who he's another fun character. You have basically a demon. You have a bat guy. An Irish guy with tattoos. The assassin here is they're not just copy paste. They have different looks and different personalities. They're all not cookie cutter, which was very nice. And again, for being their first real thing, I'm gonna applaud it. It's nice to see that these people actually cared, because for a lot of stuff from Disney and Warner and Marvel and DC, it doesn't feel like they care. I actually really kind of like the music for this, the OST for it. They had some, actual music, like copyrighted music and whatnot from actual artists and what they played, but then the actual soundtrack itself, I actually kind of like. There's some really cool stuff, especially the the main dispatch theme. which you hear in towards the end of the very first chapter, called "Easier If We Fly." That's very good. That's gonna be like some classic. I could see that becoming some classic video game music. The other thing that I really enjoyed in regards to the villain was that he's a villain. You know, there's none of this, oh, I'm just misunderstood. I'm a victim of circumstance. In this game, the villain Shroud is a villain. He's not a likable. You don't like him. There's no sympathy for him. At one point, and I mean, it was useful for them to do this. I appreciate that they did this. He literally threatens to kill a dog. And at that point, irredeemable. We do not like this man. So I hate saying this, I shouldn't have to, but it's refreshing to see a villain be a villain, you know? Like I had mentioned with, you know, heroes being heroes, it's so genuinely frustrating that we can't just get, you know, everything's got to have an asterisk, you know, everyone's got to be like, the villain's always got to be a victim of circumstance, to be the actual real heroes, and the heroes got to be the actual villains. It's nice to depart from that. I'm sick of it. It's been a lot, and I mean a lot of that, and it's nice that we're finally starting to, hopefully this is a step in the right direction to getting, you know, proper, actual, you know, just classic heroes and classic villains again. Excuse me. One of the things that I did like is that they really did a good job with the characters of making them feel human. I had mentioned about Robert, how he did feel realistic. You know, he felt relatable. He was just a dude, didn't have all these crazy powers, so you could relate him through that way. He has a dog that he takes care of, which is the one that Shroud threatens, because, you know, he's a dickhead. And, you know, like I said, he's very snarky, he's very sarcastic, but he's also, you know, he's just a good guy. You know, he's a guy trying to do the right thing because it's the right thing. I really like Blonde Blazer a lot because, while she does kind of seem like she's supposed to be the Captain America kind of Wonder Woman-y character, that she is very, you know, again, just good for the sake of being good. She's, you know, very positive. She's also flawed. You know, she does make mistakes in the game. And, you know, even she grows. She has her own insecurities, and she feels like a very relatable character, which is why I chose to go that route. And, it was just nice. And the other characters feel that way, too. There's some moments in the game where they get very vulnerable, which is very nice to see. And there are some moments where, you know, you can kind of tell they're putting their walls up and whatnot, and you got to work through that. It's great. It was, again, it's just writing. Simple writing should not feel like a breath of fresh air, but them's the breaks. That's how we're doing right now. But overall, I really just enjoyed I liked it. It was fun. It was nice to see, and especially with, even though there are kind of, you know, references to, you know, existing characters and whatnot, these characters and the personalities, they did feel kind of fresh and kind of new. So that was kind of nice. Now, with that being said, because I'm already starting to ramble, I ramble a lot when I do these videos. You guys know how it is. I'm trying to get to a point where I can actually, like, edit and do stuff and whatnot, but we're getting there. I do want to talk about the negatives, because I would feel very dishonest with you guys and myself if I didn't bring up the negatives that I did have with the game. Overall, I love it, but just because I love something doesn't mean I'm not going to point out the flaws. And I have the first of which I'm going to reference. I have referenced before, is that the basic story is very weak. The character writing does a lot, and I mean a lot, of the heavy lifting. It's a very basic story, which is fine, but it feels like from episode 1, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of exposition, kind of, you know, and you're introduced to Robert in this world. You meet Blonde Blazer. You learn about what SDN is. That very first episode is very, you know, I'm personally invested. I want to know what's going on with these characters. I like Robert. I want to know more. And the game is basically broken up into 8 chapters. And that's episode 1. And then episode, 2 is a lot of, you know, learning SDN and meeting the team. It's fine. Not a lot of crazy stuff happens. Episode 3 is more of that. There's a lot of relationship stuff. There's a lot of stuff you learn about with kind of Blonde Blazer if you go down that route. That makes a lot more sense. And then even in episode 4, which episode 4 is the episode where you make the decision who you want to romance. And for those first 4 episodes, those are like the biggest things that happen. A lot of the stuff in between is just, doing the actual dispatch gameplay, where you sit behind your basic role as Robert is you're at SDN, and you basically deploy the different heroes to different emergencies throughout Los Angeles. That's where it takes place. And you have to choose the characters that are most suited for each different situation. Like this one might need someone who's very, smart and clever. This situation might need someone who's very strong. This one might need someone who's very durable and can tank things very well. This other thing might need someone who's very, charming and charismatic. So that's kind of fun. It does in some scenarios, especially early on, because there is a lot of like learning the world and things and exposition kind of stuff, that it does feel very tedious almost at some points, but it's fine. It's one of those things where if you're interested, you'll get through it. If you're not interested, I can see it kind of getting very boring very fast. And big things really don't start happening, I think, until episode, what was it? 5. There's a big thing at the end of episode 5 that's a really cool moment for the team to bond. Then the end of episode 6 and on to 7 and 8 is where things really start to really pick up, and you really start to get hooked. And there's a lot of, like more action and excitement. But the first kind of 5 episodes, they are kind of slow. So if you guys do end up playing this, which I encourage you to do, I hope you guys do. I hope you guys enjoy it. I will say, be prepared for that. It is a lot of, again, it's a completely new world, so there's a lot of, introduction and expository, things you need to learn. I do wish that maybe there could have been 1 or 2 more episodes put into the story. I would say probably maybe between 5 and 6. Maybe have it be 10 episodes, because you could earlier on there's maybe one action scene through the first 5, 6 episodes, and I do kind of wish there was more. So adding another episode or 2 in around there could probably give you some more action. And for either romance that you choose, whether it's Invisigal or Blonde Blazer, I do feel there needs to be a little bit more. It would have been nice if we could have maybe gone on more dates with them, interacted with them more. It works for what it is, but I do wish there was a little bit more, because it does feel in some instances kind of rushed, which is unfortunate, but I mean, it is what it is. That is one of my biggest issues, that I do wish it was longer. Probably the biggest issue with, again, that a lot of people are going to have, is the dialogue. It's very much, now I have heard from people, because like I have mentioned, it does take place in Los Angeles, California. I've heard from people that live in California that the way the characters talk is very accurate to how people in, LA and California do talk, which unfortunately can get very cringe and annoying very fast. So that is an issue I do have, is that the dialogue is it's not only kind of cringy in some areas, but it is kind of weak. There are moments where it's very good. Like the highs are high, but the lows are very low. So it's kind of, there's some in between, but for the most part, it's either really good or really kind of like, eh. So they probably could have maybe done another pass or 2 on the dialogue, at least part of the script. If you're someone who's used to it, I'm sure it won't bother you. But if you're someone like me who's not the biggest fan of it, I was able to push through it, but it was kind of like, there were moments where I was like, oh, God, can we not, please? But it didn't totally ruin anything for me. It didn't make me go, oh my God, I'm tired of this. But it came close, I will say. It did come very close in some aspects. Now, if that's not the biggest issue I had with the game, the biggest issue might actually be one of the cool things. I mean, it's a superhero game, right? Superheroes synonymous with comic books. And they did create, I think it was 5 or 6 little mini digital comics to, correlate with the game. Some of them were, I believe they were based on, because in the dispatching section, some of the characters are, I guess you could say, friends and have synergies with each other. They're kind of like buddy buddy. Like these two are like buddy buddy. Like another two are kind of buddy buddy. So when you pair them off into the different missions and whatnot, they get a buff because they're friends or whatever. A couple of the comics touched on that, which that's fine. It didn't, really. I don't really necessarily need to know. Oh, why are like Sonar and Malevola friends, or why are Invisigal and Golem best buddies or whatever. It's just kind of like, oh, they're friends, cool. That's what I need to know. It's interesting. It's a fun little thing you can do, but it's not really necessary for the game, and that's kind of the main part. The main like 3 or 4 of them. I think there's one where it talks about the one character Waterboy. You kind of learn a little bit of his backstory. Then there's 2 that really are actually kind of important to the story. There is an issue that's basically kind of Robert's origin story as a kid. Robert is, maybe if I can show it here, you can kind of see that ear right there. He's got a chunk taken out of it, as opposed to this one that's fine. You learn how that happened in the one. And I can't remember if it's in that one or another one, but you also learn the truth behind why Shroud is the villain, what his connection to Robert and his family is, and you don't learn that in the game. You learn that through, like I said, this side digital comic. And I'm kind of bothered by that. That should have been in the game. The other one that really bothers me, I can kind of let that one go to a degree, but the one that really bothers me is at the end of episode 2, there's this revelation about Blonde Blazer. And she's in a relationship. Spoilers. This is the most spoilery I'll get into. So if you don't want to be spoiled on anything in this, I'll probably say click off now. I like the game. I'll give it probably personally, like subjectively and objectively, I give it like a 9, maybe 8.5, 9 out of 10. If you guys enjoy it, don't want any spoilers, go ahead, stop it here, and go play it. But if you don't really care about this one thing being spoiled, I'm going to talk about it. At the end of episode 2, you find out that Blonde Blazer has been dating Phenomenon. They are a boyfriend and girlfriend. Her body language kind of, it seems awkward though on her end. And it's kind of like, the way she acts is like, so they're dating? Why is she acting like this? And then at the beginning of episode 3, you find out they broke up. But we don't know why. The reasoning she gives in the game, I believe, is that she wants to shake things up a little bit. It felt like the right time. But in this comic, you learn that the real reason she broke up with Phenomenon is because, like I said, Phenomenon's an alien. He doesn't really necessarily understand, the intricacies and things of humans. And Blonde Blazer, her secret identity, her real name is Mandy. She doesn't want to be Blonde Blazer all the time. She wants to have moments where, she can just be herself. She can be Mandy. She can just kind of like, chill and do, like couple things. Whereas Phenomenon, he doesn't really understand that. He really kind of just loves her for the superhero. He just wants to do superhero things 24/7. He doesn't really, because he doesn't get it. That's what he's used to. That's what he knows. So you kind of can't, blame him for it. But also at the same time, if that's what Blazer wants, you kind of, you understand that, yeah, you can understand why she would end things, because, that's not exactly the relationship she wants, which is why she likes Robert, because he likes her for more than just, the superhero. And these digital comics were not unlockables in the game. They weren't like, oh, you beat a chapter, here's an unlockable, or, oh, you beat the whole game, here are all these unlockables, which they should have done. It should have been at the end of each episode, or however many issues they had or whatever, or if you make certain achievements, whatever, they should have been able to be accessed in the game in the normal story that you buy. These mini digital comics were basically DLC you had to buy. I can't remember how much they were. I think it was maybe like $10, $20, something like that. Because the base game itself, I believe, is $29.99. So you figure with those, it's like instead of being $30, it's like 40 or 50. And that is the thing I really does kind of bother me. Like, that, if that's probably the biggest black spot on this game, because if you're going to do that, just do it like the other ones and make it where it's just, oh, this is how these two characters became friends, or this is why these other two characters are friends. Don't put important details of characters or origin stories in something you have to buy in addition to this that would actually help in the game. Because a lot of people, like I mentioned earlier, when they thought that Blonde Blazer was a villain, they were like, called her, they thought she was a cheater, like she broke up with Phenomena Man because she's like Robert and whatnot, and not having that, story that they put in the comic not being in the game kind of caused that. Had that been in the game, had you maybe played through episode 2, then, oh, hey, here's this add-on comic you can read that bridges the gap between 2 and 3. You get to see their actual date. You would understand it more. Maybe people wouldn't have hated her so much. Because even the devs said they were surprised at how much the player base disliked Blonde Blazer or thought that she was, untrustworthy or something. Not me. I believed in my baby from day one. But that's besides the point. I get where they were coming from. They should have had that in the game, and that is one thing that really genuinely bothers me. If you want to do, like specific origin stories, sure, like I said, but stuff that's that kind of integral, they should have put in the game, not made you have to spend more money to access it outside of it. That is probably my biggest issue with the game, other than, maybe adding more episodes and more to the story. But like I said, overall, I do genuinely love this universe. I thought it was a lot of fun. The characters were cool. I bought the calendar. I think the one company YouTube is doing plushies. I already have them on pre-order. There's a bunch of shirts in the TikTok shop. I want to get some of those. The actual studio, they're releasing merch. I'm going to eventually get that. I'm going to go crazy. As you guys can see around me, I don't half-ass things. If I am a fan of something and love something, I dive into it wholeheartedly. So hopefully at some point I might have some, dispatch posts or something on my walls as well. But at the moment, I want to at least have the calendar. But that's basically going to be it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I appreciate you guys for watching. I am sorry I was gone for so long. Hopefully I'll be able to, get somewhat more consistent with doing more videos. I have a lot of ideas that I still want to get done. Still need to see Fantastic Four and talk about that. And there's a couple other things. Got to continue with Batman Hush 2, because that's been a slog. It's even worse than I thought it was going to be. But yeah, that's basically going to be it for this video. If you guys are so inclined, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and tell me if you guys have played it before, what you guys thought. If you haven't played it yet, did this convince you? Did this not convince you? Did you like what I had to say? Did you not like what I had to say? But that's going to be it for me today, guys. I hope you guys have a great day, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace and love, everybody. Have a great day.